identifying good investment opportunities versus PPA pricing and hedging strategies is that we are, as most other investors, trying to employ some sort of limited or non-recourse financing. And as such, obviously, PPAs are a direct requirement for us. So I think I hand over to the next one.
Thank you, yes.
Perfect. My name is Evangelos Razis. I'm the head of Southeastern Europe within Aurora Energy Research. Aurora is a world-leading provider of advisory and analytics services, only focusing on energy markets, really. So we have a global presence, but my team is based in Athens, where we cover Southeastern Europe, including Greece, Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia, Slovenia, Croatia, and Hungary. And the main value that we add is through our long-term views in the market. So that's what I will be talking mostly about, evolution of prices and market dynamics.
Good afternoon. My name is Milena Videnova. I'm Managing Director of Axpo Bulgaria. We are wholesale trader on 15 markets in Europe for power and gas, and we are also part of Axpo Solution. Axpo is the market leader on the PPA market, and last week was awarded by Energy Risk Magazine and also by our customers and partners as #1 in power supply. So I'm going to talk about the pilot transactions in Southeastern Europe.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a great lunch. First of all, I would like to congratulate the organizers of the event for putting it all together, and to thank them as well for inviting me to participate on this particular panel. My name is Ivan Velev. I represent the Dutch company ACT Commodities. What we do is that we provide market access to the renewable energy consumers to the markets which are all around the world by giving them all kind of consultancy and helping them to reach their carbon neutrality goals and sustainability goals that they want to achieve. And I would be discussing topics related to guarantees of origin later on in this panel.
Good afternoon to everybody.
Can we have the microphone on?
Okay. So, good afternoon. My name is Dimitar Bartov, and I'm the Managing Director of Synergon Energy. We're among the biggest retail trading companies in Bulgaria. We manage a portfolio of about 400 megawatts installed capacity of RES producers, and we supply roughly about 12,000 retail consumers. So, being a company of that size, our main goal is to facilitate meeting the needs of both producers and consumers. So I'll be happy to share my experience in this field in the following minutes with you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Severin Vertigov. First of all, thank you for having me. Very honored to be here. I'm country manager for Enery. We are a green independent power producer with a portfolio of 300 megawatt installed capacity of PV and wind in Bulgaria, Romania, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Austria. We have also a sizable greenfield portfolio we are developing in the region. Within the last 6 months, we signed 5 long-term PPAs in the region, in particularly Romania. So I would be glad to share some insights and have a productive discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. Good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for having you after the lunch break. My name is Konstantin. I'm working for the Bulgarian Power Exchange called CYBEX. Currently, we are operating 3 exchange segments. Both of them are spot markets, namely the day-ahead market and intraday market. Both of them are running in a fully coupled mode together with all European member states markets. The third segment is so-called bilateral contract marketplace, where we have longer term periods of delivery of electricity with physical delivery. Beside this, in cooperation with the European Energy Exchange, a couple of years ago, we presented the so-called Bulgarian Power futures, which are financial hedging deals cleared by the day-ahead price produced by IBEX. Thanks for having me in this panel.
Thank you very much. Maybe I should introduce myself as well. Maria Popova, I'm Director for Carbon Neutrality and Renewable Electricity at the European Federation of Energy Traders, and I would also like to thank the organizers for having me. It's a great pleasure. So I've got a very long list of questions, so let's get started. Our objective in the next hour will be to give you an overview of PPA market dynamics in the region, trends. We'll also touch upon, albeit briefly, guarantees of origin and spot markets. But a bit on the context in which we find ourselves. So the last 2 years have been very difficult with extreme volatility and high prices, exacerbated by the tragic war in Ukraine. We've seen 439 by Acer's count, national interventions, market interventions to address the crisis, which it had a serious impact on investor confidence. And it's to an extent perhaps surprising that in this difficult context, PPAs have survived. So year on year, between 2021 and 2022, we had actually an increase in PPA deals in Europe from 154 to 161. We also had a strong start to 2023. In Q1 this year, this is disclosed figures, but we've had 70 deals and about 6 gigawatt of contracted capacity across Europe, with Spain being Europe's champion. So what is the picture in Southeastern Europe? I'd like to invite the panel to give us a bit of an overview. Maybe we can start with Severin. I would also like to hear about the demand from corporates and industrials. So is the demand growing?
I believe it is. Actually, the demand in this part of Europe is dominated by the corporates, especially Bulgaria, where we see growing interest for corporate PPAs and let's say more moderate to low interest from the wholesalers. There are progressive companies in the region with ESG policies in place that want to have this green supply element in their energy mix. We see regular updates on deals in Greece and Romania, but we also witnessed the first sign of the emerging PPA markets in Bulgaria. There is publicly available information on 3 long-term deals. The 2 telecoms, so 2 of the 3 telecoms signed long-term PPAs with local and international developers, and also a company producing aluminium elements. All these deals are, according to the information in the media, are for tenors of 10 or more years. Nowadays, we at Teneri we started the contracting of our most advanced project that we are developing, and yeah, the initial observation was reconfirmed. We see interest, of course, at the right price and at the right risk allocation between buyer and the seller, but we see interest from corporates with ESG policies. We should also mention here that the Bulgarian economy is export-oriented, and in many of the cases, we see the clients of the potential off-takers pushing them to sign green PPAs in the respective markets. So in the resume, I mentioned that We managed to close PPA successfully in Romania for the last few quarters, but we expect to announce the first deals in Bulgaria in the next few weeks.
Thank you. Maybe another comment from Evangelos or Dimitar or
I mean,
yeah.
happy to quickly comment on this. Yeah, I do see increased interest from corporates. I would still say that Southeastern Europe is behind, is lagging behind compared to other markets in Europe. And there are a few reasons behind that. I mean, there are not that many industrial players and also not that many credit-worthy companies. So that poses quite a constraint on how much volume can be going to a long-term PPA. The other thing I wanted to say was that it is still a region with oversupplied markets. So mostly what we see is developers trying to secure PPAs as an alternative to long-term CFDs or in order to get financing and de-risk their projects. So this is something that we have seen over the last 2 years. To be fair, over the last year, we have also seen quite high merchant revenues. So some players are not necessarily going into PPAs. They can wait so that they capture the upside from going merchant, but still a rather oversupplied few markets, I would say.
Maybe Milena.
Thank you, Maria. Axpo is interested in the whole region, and since the last Resource Europe, South Europe conference, we concluded 3 milestone transactions, one solar project in Greece, pay as produced, and 2 wind projects in Croatia and also in Serbia. Of course, this part of Europe is still an emerging market, and there were many regulatory changes. Basically, this killed the market in Romania, the long-term market, and we all understand that consumers have to be protected. Nevertheless, we expect now with stabilization of prices due to lower economic production in Europe, also to have phase out of all these measures so that the market can come to normality and based on market principles, those long-term projects to be realized. And based on our expertise and cooperation with all stakeholders, investors, customers, developers, as well as financial institutions, we are flexible and able to provide all different types of PPAs, virtual, also with physical delivery. The market looks promising despite all the challenges which we face and were mentioned by the previous panels.
Thank you. Maybe a word from Dimitar, or shall we move to the next question? Yeah.
Everything that was said up until now is absolutely true. And frankly speaking, according to me, most of the PPAs will be done after the industrial consumers come to the conclusion that the government will not intervene every time things go wrong. Because up until now, we see that having a PPA is a strategy in terms of risk management, like fixing part of your consumption at a particular price. And in the last 2 years, when things went wrong, we saw that the governments everywhere set up policies which managed to soften substantially the blow which the industrial consumers should have taken. I mean, at some point last year, in August, for example, prices on the market were above 400 euros, and the compensations from the state were almost 70% of that. So, in the next few months, and here I agree that the international companies are leading the way, when the law is over, which assures that the industrial consumers will receive compensation if the prices reach certain levels, at that point, all of them should start thinking about hedging and risk management, So I'm pretty sure that in the next 6 to 12 months, a lot of deals will be done, because making business in the region and making business everywhere is all about managing risk, and everybody knows that. So I'm pretty optimistic that in the next few months, a lot of deals will be done.
Thank you. Mats, maybe I can invite a comment from your side as well on what we see as trends, but also on market interventions in the region, because that was my next question, but we already started hearing comments on that.
Yeah, absolutely, Maria. Thank you very much. No, we as a developer, we obviously see the situation in the market that there's a lack of speed. The governments are sitting around and waiting for something to happen. If we take the Romanian market, where I'm leading our team of 12 people and we have a large development, the government has been talking about CFDs now forever. And the question we are asking ourselves, is it a realistic even plan that the government in Romania would have to do something? Because the plan is obviously to support development of renewable power production that can be put into the industries and can be thereby helping out the decarbonization. The way we see it is the government is just way too slow in all these countries. Speed to market for investors is really, really important. And the only ones that seemingly have understood it is really the industries that are looking for disconnecting themselves from the gas prices, the coal prices, etc. And they want to have stable power prices in order to focus on their industrial activity where they are making money. They want to get rid of the issue about electricity pricing, like always, right? And here I think the question is really coming in for us when it comes, as you were talking about, the volatility of the prices and so on. We are able to provide them with long-term, secure, stable price levels. But then we have the other constraints, which is the grid. And again, it goes back to government. Government is just way too slow putting in all these billions that we hear European Union talking about. I mean, why is it going to take me 5 years to build a power line when all the documentation is already there? I mean, if you really want to have stable price levels, get going, government.
Thank you. Well, I wanted to make a comment briefly on the market intervention from our side, as if it has done quite a bit of work around fallbacks, raising awareness of the impact on the market. And we've seen measures in the region as well. So just wanted to highlight the importance, I think, for restoring investor confidence and making sure that such measures are phased out in time, and also maybe looking forward, I think for kind of regulatory stability, it would be important, should another crisis come around, to have a more harmonized approach that focuses on protecting consumers and does not disrupt the market as much as some of the measures that we've seen have done. But again, let's move to PPAs, PPA market dynamics in particular. Much of the growth of PPAs in Europe lately has been driven by increasing interest in hedging against rising prices and volatility, with shorter-term PPAs gaining prominence. Is this also the case in the region here? Maybe we start again with Severin.
I wouldn't be firm on that one, just because my first observation that I shared was that the PPA demand is dominated by the corporates. On the corporate side, I really believe that first of all, what they aim at is predictability, and it doesn't make much sense to gain predictability for 3 to 5 years. I mean, having a fixed price PPA, of course, this is beneficial in terms of better budgeting and knowing your expenses on the commodity. So it is somehow, I would agree, if we're referring to the wholesaler and the wholesalers and big traders as off-takers, definitely the preference there is to have a variety of hedging options, and with duration of, let's say, 3 years. It's easier for the traders to hedge the exposure, but if you're dealing with an end consumer, I believe that the preference is towards a longer duration, so 10, even more than 10 years.
Thank you. Maybe Milena, comment?
So the different needs regarding for different type of projects, it depends whether how big is the project, whether it's related with external funding, bankability. Usually, if it's externally funded and it's bigger one, there is a requirement from the lender to have a reputable off-taker, also creditworthy. And then to have predictability. For smaller scale projects or medium size, if the investor decides to speculate or not to hedge or to go to the stock exchange because there were, how to say, very nice opportunities, this is also observed on the market, and then it could be a short-term PPA up to 1 year, also combined with guarantees of origins. It depends. So the beauty is that we are able to offer all type of tailor-made solutions, and there is no universal, or we are far away from standardization, even for SME segment, because imagine something is going wrong, there are market damages to be calculated, and some of the off-takers will say, okay, I'm keen on grace period of 3 months, we'll say not at all, how it's calculated, spot or mark-to-market adjustment. It's very complex system, so it's difficult to say. I believe there is place for all types of PPAs and then to experiment. And it's also connected with the overall reform and harmonization of the market. If we reduce all the state subsidies, even for industrial customers, and this is phasing out, then the interest will be probably higher on the long-term market. It's a process, because what happened, for instance, with the balancing reform? Now we have since 1 month, one single balancing, one single price in Bulgaria, and then we introduced the 15 minutes, but the rest is part of the liberalization. It's still under transition and was delayed due to the crisis. So I believe there is place for all types of PPAs, and it depends on the best structure and the targets of the customers.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe on one point that you touched, credit worthiness, just a follow-up question. The issue in the SME segment of credit risk has been widely acknowledged, and it's in a number of pieces of legislation, the guidance on PPAs by the Commission. So most recently in the proposal by the Commission on electricity market design reform. So the idea is to ensure that member states provide facilitate the access to guarantees for such SMEs. Either market-based or government-based. So I was wondering whether there are any developments in the region in this area in terms of providing such mechanisms that would facilitate access to guarantees to basically facilitate the growth of PPAs in the SME segment?
You are right, Maria. This is a hot topic, the aggregated PPAs, and I'm aware only in the Nordic, where it's really a region with very long experience and also very long terms of PPAs, approximately on average 15 years. Only there the state decided to support the states to give state guarantee. So far in none of the other countries in our region as well. This is a topic for further discussion to de-risk the market and to allow also smaller projects as part of the energy transition to be properly hedged. It might be an opportunity for standardization. It will take a lot of efforts nevertheless. And this is one of the opportunities. The other is, of course, to offer financial leverage, like in Greece, for the investors to subsidize the interest, which is a fact under their plan for recovery and resilience. There are different instruments which could be applied so that we can increase the green part in the energy mix and also have proper security of supply.
And on that one, if I may add, just there weren't any concrete steps in the region towards standardization and improving the credibility or improving the opportunity to aggregate PPAs. But I believe that the first step, and I would be really happy to hear more about it in terms of standardization, was announced by IBEX on the new segment for PPA trading. Which is exactly that. Once this materializes, it will provide the standardization needed, and of course will facilitate the PPA aggregation.
We'll touch upon this later. We'll hear more from Konstantin. Maybe before that, well, you mentioned standardization. I was wondering what are the most challenging parts of negotiating PPAs, and whether standard contracts, when you're concluding bilaterally, you're negotiating your PPA, can help to well, but reduce transaction costs, negotiation time. Whether you have any experience with the IFED standard contract. Maybe I should mention we developed the standard contract available for free for the industry, basically to facilitate the growth of PPAs. We developed it in cooperation with the resource platform. So maybe a point on standardization, contractual standardization, and its benefits, I hope.
In my view, this is the most widely applied documentation for physical PPAs. This is what we based our agreements on. Especially on the physical side, it is only IFET, and also would like to mention that it is suitable for variety of structures. You can do base produced, nominated, fixed shape, or base load using IFET, and the corporates feel much comfortable with these agreements. They're publicly available. Think we also have them translated in Bulgarian. So yeah, definitely it's the template that we are applying. The 5 deals that I mentioned in the beginning that we concluded, all of them are IFET based.
Thank you. Maybe, Milena, you mentioned the balancing reforms. I was just wondering whether there are any further comments on that point. Just looking at my notes for this section, another topic I wanted to cover. You mentioned it, but maybe, I don't know, Dimitar or Severin, if you have anything to add in terms of managing balancing risk. And
so there is an issue which is going to be bigger and bigger in the next year or two in terms of balancing, because we are already witnessing certain days and certain hours in which prices are around zero because of the surplus of energy at that particular point of time. So if a trading company is managing the rest producers, so the photovoltaic, and we forecast the production for the day ahead market. So we make the forecasts, let's say in the morning, and afterwards in the afternoon when the prices are seen, some of the producers of RES energy decide that it's better to shut the producer down in order not to pay any taxes in the time span in which the prices are around zero, which is going to become a big problem for everybody, because if they do it without telling the coordinator of the balancing group, this immediately forms as a cost, additional cost, because we pay penalties to the TSO. So everybody should really have in mind that the end game for everybody is to be in good communication with each other and not to make any moves without informing your partner. So this is also a thing which is going to be a problem in terms of balancing in the next, maybe let's say year, 2, 3 years, up until the storage systems and the batteries kick in and we start to work with them to work around this problem which is going to form.
Thank you.
If I may, but very quickly, I mean, I cannot get into the details Dimitar did, given his experience in the balancing market, but from a pure PPA perspective, because the balancing markets in the region are still immature and are constantly changing. What we've seen recently is that the off-takers are avoiding the as-produced PPAs, so they do not want to assume the balancing risks for a long term. And it is kind of natural for the developers to try to adjust to these expectations, and the balancing is anyway created by the producers, and it's natural for them to cover these costs. So so to say, the developers' dream for long-term pay-as-produced agreements in the region is hardly achieved currently. So we need to adapt new, or let's say different structures, like pay-as-forecasted or fixed profile for the full duration of the PPA.
That was actually my next question on preferred delivery profiles here in the region. Because with baseload PPAs and high prices, there can be, for a producer, a very high shaping costs. So yeah, I'm interested to hear from other panelists, what kind of trends do we see in terms of delivery profiles?
It depends who is going to reply, I guess.
Yeah.
That's why it's a diverse panel.
Yeah.
Let's hear.
Yeah.
Yes, Mats?
No, I mean, we have seen over in Serbia, where we are developing a 170 megawatt project that is now about to go into financial close in early September, that shaping the PPA production after your expected production is very important, I think, for both parties. And we all know that when it comes down to a PV plant, it doesn't produce at night, but it does produce a lot around 12 o'clock. A wind project is obviously not exactly the same, but we do have quite often very distinct periods over the year where you have strong production versus other periods where you have lower production. Winter, summer, normally you have a higher production in winter versus the summer. Turkey, it may be completely different, the opposite. And what we have seen is that there's quite a lot of willingness to take that into account when you're looking at block of power and so on, for the off-taker as well as the intended producer.
Thank you. Yes, but very briefly, if you don't mind, because I would like to move to the next section.
Actually, it depends on the type of a renewable asset. Of course, also our PV investors, they prefer pay-as-produced. And this is also possible in terms of PPAs to be integrated. Of course, depends on the quality of the counterparty. And for wind, they're different. It's rather base load, and it's also taking into consideration the seasonality. And there could be also other structures implemented.
Thank you. I would like now to move to PPA pricing and invite Evangelos to give us some insights into the PPA pricing dynamics in the region. How are market dynamics affecting the fair value of contracts? And we've got a few slides. Great. Thank you very much. Evangelos, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, we have been doing quite a lot of work in assessing the market value and the fair value of PPA prices. I would love to go to the previous slide if that is the one, but I can't. Anyway, I can talk about it. So we at Aurora look at the fundamental value of PPAs, which is obviously part of the one. That was not it. Probably it's an earlier version of the deck. No worries. We can move to the next slide. Sorry for that. So what I'm trying to explain is that, yes, the fundamental value of a PPA price is one part of the decision-making when you go into a negotiation. The other thing is the market power and the market dynamics more generally. But looking at the fundamental value, this is mainly driven by three components, I would say. The value of electricity, which is a function of base load prices, of cannibalization in this particular country, and the expectation for the change in cannibalization. The second is the value of the greenness of the electricity, so guarantees of origin mainly, which has been increasingly a component that matters now when we talk about PPAs with increasing values for guarantees of origin. And then the risk that goes into this PPA, depending on the commercial terms of the PPA. So how much there is a value of hedging within the PPA. So how much higher prices could go in a scenario, or also what is the cost of capital at risk. So by locking yourself into this PPA, how much cost is there if prices go really down for a potential off-taker. So these are all things that we assess in order to calculate the fair value. And this has changed quite a lot recently. I mean, we have looked at the day-ahead prices here in this graph. At the top, we see examples from Bulgaria and Romania, and we see that average prices have gone quite high. I mean, after going low in 2020 because of COVID, we saw a big jump, more than 2 times in both countries, in the whole region really, and they averaged more than 260 euros per megawatt hour last year. And prices have gone down recently, but they are expected to take longer to get back to pre-pandemic and pre-war prices. And the main reason is gas and carbon. So given the current market design, which according to the latest developments at the European level, the market design is not expected to change fundamentally, we do expect gas and carbon to be the main drivers behind prices, power prices. So looking at gas, we do expect that markets will drop quite a lot over the next 3 years, reaching a low by 27 maybe, when most of the new LNG terminals will be available in Europe, which means that there is a rebalancing of supply and demand. And after that point, we do expect a very slow growth in the price of gas, mainly driven by the fact that LNG will be the marginal unit and there will be more demand in Asia for gas. The second driver, carbon prices, that's also quite a big driver, and it's expected to only grow over the next few years. So stronger decarbonization ambition and the tighter emission allowances will mean more high prices in carbon. So that results overall in a high value in merchant markets, and that is what is expected to drive the fundamental value of green electricity. So in this graph we see the gray bars, which are the base load prices, obviously sanitized and removed. We have removed the numbers for commercial reasons. But the main point here is that we can see that from base load prices, which are expected to drop by 2040, driven by gas and carbon, as we discussed, we also see the blue bars, which are the capture prices for wind, and the green bars, which are the capture prices for solar. We can see that there is a strong discount that reflects the cannibalization, which is more pronounced in the case of solar. And that's, depending on the country. So we can see a different discount rate in Romania compared to Bulgaria, which reflects the mix in each country. But what we see here is that the fundamental value remains much higher than the levelized cost of solar and wind in both countries, which means that prices remain relatively high, and that's one of the driver of PPA prices as well. As I mentioned, there's other dimensions. The risk that depends on how high the high scenario is and how low the low scenario will be. And the final bit is balancing. We talked about balancing, and it is a material component here in Southeast Europe, but that's one thing that we expect to drop as a cost and the risk. And that's mainly driven by the fact that balancing markets are opening up. more competition, more liquidity, and also better forecasting capability, which means lower balancing costs in general.
Great, thank you so much. It's been excellent. Always interesting to hear price outlooks. Now I would like to turn to Konstantin and invite you to comment on a couple of things. Maybe first briefly on spot price, spot markets, then futures, and potentially using them for PPA hedging, also in kind of how far ahead do we find liquidity, and then also a comment on your plans for GOs, so guarantees of origin and PPA trading screens.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. It was very interesting for me to listen to the colleagues here, because we as a power exchange, for us it's extremely important to know what the members and the market participants need in order to create together the market design. Dimitar was right telling us, and all of us are remembering, that only a few months ago we monitored an extremely high prices. Even I remember that the average monthly price for August last year on the day-ahead market segment was above 400 euros per megawatt hours. Now, these last couple of months, we can see much more stable electricity prices on the spot markets. It's around 100 euros per megawatt hour, but the volatility, I think, is still very high. For example, during the weekends, we can see prices on the spot markets starting from zero, almost zero, and even negative ones in such hours, and in other hours reaching, for example, and to be above 100 or even 200 euros per megawatt hours. And these prices are actually even limited by the available cross-border transmission rights, because they are not enough, never enough to secure the full flow between the marketplace. That is why I do believe that the hedging instruments are very important, and probably we have to educate ourselves to have much bigger hedging culture, because actually this is the future of the market. That is why we decided to introduce and to try to develop another screen where we'd like to meet the producers and the off-takers of green PPAs. That's why we are counting on our market participants to let us know what they need. And sorry for repeating once again, but it's more important to create together the design of these market segments. Of course, according to the PPAs, one of the main issue is standardization. Do we need a standardization? Because we have to know the kind to standardize the payment. Do we have pay as produced, pay as nominated, or pay as predefined? What price should we put on the contracts? One fixed price, a step price, or floor price? And probably the better approach, according to this, is to have two separate sections on this segment. One section to be with customized parameters. Probably it will be more useful for the longer PPAs. Longer, I mean, let's say 5 or 7+ years, where the auction initiator to be in position to predefine the parameters of the product. The second section probably will be with standardized products and parameters, but probably this section will be used for PPAs with 1, 2, or 3 years as a period of delivery. I know that this covers and it is much similar to the current bilateral contract segment, but I think that during the discussions in the upcoming months, we'll clear this situation. According to the guarantees of origin platform, I think that together with the PPA, we will manage to present to the market participants a full set of instruments in order to manage their electricity trading activity at all. You know that with the last Energy Act amendments in Bulgaria, the market of these guarantees of origin are part of the exchange market in Bulgaria, so we are obliged to develop it. Unfortunately, Bulgaria is not still a full member of the European issuing body, and in the light of this, the guarantees of origin which are issued here in Bulgaria are not fully tradable in Europe. But as we have a strong discussion with the local agency, I think this will be completed in a couple of months. So now we are in a position to design the market, to secure and to provide the software functionality of the screens, and after that we will be able to discuss these details with the market participants. I think that till the end of the year, these segments will be in an operation.
Great, thank you. Let's now stay with guarantees of origin. So as you know, guarantees of origin, they can be traded as part of or transferred as part of a PPA. As we heard from Evangelos, they are an important part of a PPA. They, well, their value is included in the price of a PPA, and also they carry basically the green element, the information about the renewable origin of the electricity. But they can also be traded separately from the produced electricity. At the recent, over the past year or so, the price dynamics in this market have been quite interesting. So from 20-40 cents, I believe, for guarantees of origin, now we see prices of 4 to 8 euro. At the recent conference, one of the speakers even mentioned that they've done a calculation that if the price of guarantees of origin remains at 5.5 euro between now and 2030, that would generate 57 billion for renewable energy projects in Europe, which is quite a big number. So now I would like to invite Ivan to tell us a bit more about this space and trends in the region.
Thank you very much. Yeah, first of all, maybe it's good to share what a guarantee of origin is. It is an electronic document which proves that a certain amount of energy was produced by renewables and injected into the grid. And basically, this is the only way for a consumer to claim that the electricity which they consume comes from renewables, unless they have, of course, an on-site production. So what are these instruments used for? Corporates which have ESG strategies and would like to reduce their direct and indirect emissions, they come to us and they receive the full package of instruments with which they can do it. So Scope 2 from the greenhouse gas protocol says that the indirect emissions are coming from the electricity which we consume. Why are these indirect? Because the emissions are not where we consume the energy, but where it was produced. So basically, we can reduce those indirect emissions by procuring guarantees of origin. One guarantee of origin equals 1 megawatt hour of electricity produced and injected into the grid. So big part of our client portfolio are corporates that are not ready yet to sign, let's say, a long-term PPA, but they still have the idea of being green and having their operations carbon neutral. So that's why without signing a PPA, they can easily claim that the electricity they consume comes from renewables by procuring these guarantees of origin. And yeah, as mentioned before, ACT provides this market access to each market where there is a local registry issuing those kind of certificates. They are issued and given to the producers, and later on, as Maria mentioned, they're easily traded separately from the electricity, so they can be traded by producers, traders, and then canceled for end clients. And by having operations, ACT has operations in Amsterdam, where our main headquarters is, Paris, New York, Shanghai, and Singapore. By that coverage, we managed to provide this market access to all the corporate world, which needs those guarantees of origin. This is really in a nutshell of what guarantees of origin is and how does it work and what claims can you make when you're procuring such certificates.
Thank you very much. Just maybe a side note, but you mentioned the greenhouse gases protocol. I know at the moment there is a review of the documentation, and there are some suggestions that there may be, some suggestions for removing the market-based method for accounting, which from my perspective is really worrying, and I hope that in the responses to this review process, this will transpire, because it's, if anything, I think its importance should be reinforced. Just a side note. Maybe Milena, you are trading guarantees of origin in the region. Maybe a comment from you?
Yes, so Axpo supports this green transition, and we are part of the pan-European market of guarantees of origin. Out of Bulgaria, we manage about 26 registries for the group, as well as the Bulgarian registry. These are very good news, what Konstantin mentioned, that Bulgaria will become Bulgarian agency soon a full member of AIB. There is also another country in the region, which is Greece. They are also not a full member, and this will give more incentives to all the investors, and also will have impact on the prices, because it will be fully exchangeable and will boost further the volumes and as well the pricing of the guarantees of origin. And in the context also of this ESG directive and for corporates, so this will make a bigger market as well. And this could be part of PPA, could be traded as even now as standalone product. So for all investors and also producers of green energy, so this is a nice opportunity.
Thank you. Maybe Severin, a comment?
Yep. Romania is also not a member,
Yeah.
so none of our members, and also Bulgaria is a member of AIB. It's a drawback for virtual PPAs. I mean, the developers in these countries cannot bid for big pan-European virtual PPAs organized by the relevant platforms.
A talk about 2 years ago about this with a Swiss utility at that time that was interested in buying our electricity from a wind project in Romania. And they kind of said, well, you know, we are happy to buy the power, and well, if you want to get rid of these certificates, we can just add them to that. And at that time, obviously, the price was expected to be very low. And now all of a sudden we are talking about maybe a couple of euros per certificate, and that's starting to be a very interesting revenue stream that I think would be something that the government should really push on and make sure that that is coming to the producers so that we can build more.
Thank you. Maybe just a few more questions before we draw to a close. I wanted to get very brief comments on the electricity market design reform. PPAs have a central role in the Commission proposal. We heard from Evangelos that no fundamental changes to the market design are to be expected, but very briefly, maybe with a focus on the PPA elements of the proposal, your thoughts.
I can share something. Of course, the main topic is to improve the liquidity of the forward market. Unfortunately, as I mentioned in the beginning, we are covering the financial hedging instrument in cooperation with the European Energy Exchange, but only a few of the local domestic market participants are using it. I hope that in the future they will start hedging and use this instrument. The second topic, according to the electricity market design, is to have such hedging solutions. Of course, we hope that no one from the marketplaces in Europe will extend the ad hoc emergency measures because I think they are not market-driven solutions. So this is the main topic. PPAs plus hedging are the main drivers of the security and stability of the market.
Thank you. Unless anybody else really wants to comment further, I can move to my next question, which I find very interesting.
Maybe a few words
Yes.
on that one, because also the CFDs are mentioned. It would be, I mean, of course, the document needs to be further clarified and the specific measures to be set. It would be a bit challenging to have CFDs and simultaneously support PPAs. I mean, one of the instruments is purely market-based, being the PPAs. The CFDs a bit the opposite, although they will most probably be based on a tender. We see this operating in Germany. There is demand for PPAs, and also the developers can bid for the CFD auctions. For smaller markets like Bulgaria, Romania, this will be challenging for both supporting instruments to coexist and to supplement each other.
Thank you. Just one very quick question on co-location and trends towards 24/7 clean energy supply. The electricity market design reform puts an emphasis on flexibility. So could PPAs combine intermittent renewables and energy storage, thereby providing 24/7 renewable supply to consumers and also helping TSOs in managing an increasingly complex to manage grid? I know Severin would like to comment.
On this one, we've seen a few deals for 24/7 green electricity. Google signed such 3-year PPA, also Mercedes. The developer needs to highly overbuild in order to be sure that in each and every moment the electricity is with a green origin. I do not know, and I believe for the time being it is not economically feasible to do that. Anyway, combining PV, wind, adding some storage capacity will get you closer to green baseload. It's not exactly 24/7. It still has some merchant exposure, so you need to adjust on the day-ahead market, and maybe this should be considered as the transitional instrument, having 24/7 green baseload rather than 24/7 green supply, whatever the consumption profile of the client. And from another perspective, if this is possible and scalable, it means that the generation mix is 100% green, right? So it would be the TSO who would be responsible to dispatch.
Or you can procure the certificates on the market.
Yeah, but it's the same. If there is a timestamp on the certificates, so if you match the timing of the issuance of each green origin and the consumption of each megawatt hour, so it is the same. Whether you procure the geos separately or not. And on the geos, just one thing, it is really important to avoid trading obligation on the new segment on IBEX, something that happened for the power a few years ago. Because usually, especially in the corporate PPAs, the developers need to attach the geos to the power and not trade them separately. But other than that, 24/7, we are getting there, not there yet. The transitional instrument should be 24/7 baseload, and we should focus much more on that and the deployment of storage facilities, of course.
Thank you. Milena, I thought you wanted
Storage will be definitely the game changer for renewables. We already saw big institutional investors and funds specialized in renewables with realized project based on market principle in Western Europe and also in UK. Irrespective whether this is going to be subsidized or not, because we saw also the plans for Greece, for Bulgaria, for other countries, and how quickly those subsidies, this will change the market, will improve the security of supply, the predictability, the forecasting, and it's also somehow related with the investments in the grid and the types of renewables, the wind and solar to be combined, and how to resolve this so that we have amplification of the whole renewable strategy in the region.
If I may add a quick point on co-location, because we do look at storage quite a lot, and from purely an investment point of view, we think that operating storage, especially in the short term, in the first 3-5 years, it is much more valuable for a developer to operate batteries and whatever res asset separately, because the main value for batteries will come from the provision of system services, frequency response, and primary, secondary reserve. So there is value in co-location, but not necessarily in order to provide base load PPAs. I think the value of providing something more constant will be much lower compared to the value that you could gain if you operate without any restrictions your battery and provide those services to the grid. Maybe in the longer term, after 5-10 years, when there is a lot of flexibility in the system and the value in those markets drops, then there will be more value in increasing or making more predictable your profile. But in the short term, we think that batteries will be best suited for provision of services.
Great, thank you. I know we are pressed for time, so maybe I just had a final summary question, but we can also just move to the next panel or see if there is any pressing maybe question one.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask the panelists they specialize in PPAs. What is their opinion of the PPAs for the future, given the fact that in some of the Balkan countries, producers have, let's say, they have gotten out of their feed-in tariff contracts and are now selling onto the open market power and the certificates. How will that impact the interest of them actually to do PPAs on the long term, given that the prices of the power and the certificates are moving, let's say, more in the direction which is favorable for them to be just free on the market rather than locking themselves in, as what opposed to what the corporates want is to lock in the security or the risk avoidance of these prices. So my question is, like, how do you see this, given that this is the trend that is happening in countries like Serbia and Croatia, for instance?
Thank you very much for the question. Who would like to take it? Yes, please, Dimitar.
Frankly speaking, I don't know if you can hear me okay. So frankly speaking, I think long-term PPAs are just for developers who are going to develop a project. Projects that are already functioning are usually trying to outperform the market with shorter term PPAs, like 3-6 months up to a year, because they don't need the bankability, they don't need the security, as they're already halfway there, or some projects are even already just working for profit. So half of the rest producers are looking towards shorter term PPAs, like really 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, etc. And the ones which are developed, they're willing to pay a premium for the security and for the bankability so they can finish the project, and they're willing to lose, let's say, 10 or 20% out of the total income in the next 5 to 10 years just to have the security. So that's the premium which the consumers, the industrial consumers, are going to get just in order to provide the security which the developers need. So that's where we are, I think, really optimistic in terms of the market of PPAs developing anytime now.
And one final remark, I mean, I totally understand that the participants in the power market in the region are very price sensitive, but in the green PPAs, it's not only about the financials and the financial impact. I mean, what we've discussed on the panel today was not only PPA pricing, but also predictability, better budgeting, green image, environmental impact, of course, and this is also seriously considered when negotiating a long-term PPA.
Great. Maybe just to check for another question. Well, before I thank our panel, we've got one question for the next panel, which is on how bankable are, because we've got a panel with representatives from lenders, how bankable are shorter term PPAs is our question. I would like to thank very much our panel. It's been very interesting for me, I'm sure for our audience as well, so thank you.
Thank you.
And I would like to thank the organizers for the excellent event.
We will have short technical break for just changing the headsets to the next speakers.